Hello, Caleb from the Blandco channel. In this video, the DM got it completely wrong, and I'll tell you exactly why. First off, go watch the video if you haven't already. I really don't like using other people's videos in mine, so I will use a couple stills, but if you want to watch the video, pause this, open a new tab, and watch it. I will leave the link below. D&D is not supposed to be a realistic game. 5e is the culmination of decades of playtesting that's resulted in a system that is both fun and fast-paced. 5e is very good at interpreting pretty much anything that doesn't seem to fall into the normal rules. In the video, there's a scenario that should have been very easily interpreted by the DM, and what the player wanted to do was completely fine and completely within the rules of 5e. Lunging forward. There's an obscure rule that covers this in the rules, and it's basically the movement rules. Lunging in, attacking the enemy, getting a critical hit, killing that enemy, and lunging backwards. That's a series of actions that's easily interpreted in D&D 5e rules. Movement. Attack action. Movement. There's nothing here to say that the player can't do this. So why would such a flamboyant action be allowed in the rules of 5e? Especially at something like first level, which it would be. Moving in and out of enemies' reach in D&D 5e is kind of like a loose interpretation of close combat. You see, every enemy and every PC always has more than one attack. They have their standard attacks, and then they have attacks that can only be performed if the enemy gives them some sort of opening. An attack of opportunity, if you will. So, for an example, and gosh, I wish I had some sort of visual example for this. A combatant decides to put all their weight on their forward foot and lean forward, fully extending their arm with a short weapon. As they lean completely forward, leaving the inside of their arm, which even armored is a very vulnerable spot, and leaning forward so far that their head is actually within reach of the enemy's weapon. Even if this is done very briefly, then the opponent will still have a brief split second to react, either through martial training for a humanoid, or through instinct with some sort of monster that will just use their reflexes to just, swipe out at something that's attacking them. So the attacker overextends himself, even for just a slight second. That slight second is all the time that an enemy combatant needs to perhaps get a chance to just lash out and strike back. The attacker has left plenty of space and time to allow for that to happen. Those are the rules as written. While that is not going to simulate reality, it is going to somewhat realistically simulate what would happen if somebody tries to strike somebody from a long distance with a shorter weapon. It's a gamble that might pay off, or the weapon might strike the enemy's armor, for example, and for a split-second throw off the balance of the attacker. There are many scenarios where a brutal counterattack to the outstretched arm or the head is likely in a scenario like that. Now, obviously, if the fighter lunges in with a short sword, stabs a bandit in the head, the bandit dies, well, then the fighter is going to be safe to lunge back because the combatant is dead and there's going to be no chance of an attack of opportunity. In fact, I'm always shocked that heavily armored D&D fighters don't use this tactic when dealing with enemies that are surprised. Surprised enemies don't have a reaction and thus do not have any attacks of opportunity. There's nothing stopping a fighter from going in on a surprised enemy, taking an attack, and then moving back as a tactical approach. Because with D&D, you don't know what's going to happen the next turn. There could be a spell cast, and all the enemies suddenly are hampered in their movements. Somebody could get a lucky hit in, and the enemy that you attacked is dead. So going back after striking a surprised combatant seems to be a really good tactical move, but unfortunately, most players don't do this. They just take their PC, move it to the nearest enemy, and just plonk it down and just stay in place hitting them, which is it's a little bit disappointing, but that's what a lot of players do. There is, of course, a character class in D&D 5e that specializes in the ability to move into combat, strike, and then move away without any opportunity for the enemy to attack them. They're called rogues, and all rogues can do this at 2nd level. Now, I'm sure there's other characters and other feats and whatnot that allow PCs to do this as well, but this video is getting long enough. Gosh, it's like being within 5 feet of a combatant is super dangerous. You'd have to have some sort of near magical training in order to allow you to do that and have 0 chance of being hit back. Yeah, it sure seems like that. There are other points in the video that I could talk about, such as the strange notion that a human being is nothing but their feet. I mean, it seems like common sense, but if you move your body mass through an area, whether or not you're actually touching the ground in that area, it doesn't really matter. You're still moving the vast majority of your body mass through an area. An important point is that movement in D&D 5e is not an exact science. He's not moving 10 feet to accomplish this. He's utilizing the equivalent of 10 feet of movement during his turn to accomplish this. Think about how getting up from the ground in D&D 5e costs half your movement. If your movement speed is 30, you aren't actually physically moving 15 feet to stand up. It's a nebulous concept. There are things in 5e that just use up movement but aren't 1-to-1 ratios in terms of, like, movement. It seems really odd, this whole idea that, like, thinking, like, you are your foot. I don't know how to explain it. Maybe I should check his Twitter. Oh my god. Apparently, he thinks he's a foot. Oh my god. Chad, listen, if you're watching this video, I implore you, you're not just a foot. You are a full human being. You have a full body. You're a fully realized human being with a body. You're not a foot. Oh god, you have some critical misunderstandings about your physical manifestation in this world. Sadly, many DMs just don't take the time to allow the players to do what the players want to do. And equally as saddening, there's a small minority of players that expect 5e to deliver some sort of realistic combat that unfortunately is just not in line with the fast-paced group gameplay that 5e has kind of evolved to be. All we can do is remember that in D&D, the rules are up for interpretation. But more importantly, the vanilla rules are set up so the vast majority of people can have a good time when playing. You know, I just don't understand how this god DM at the start of that video didn't understand the rules enough to allow just a simple series of actions by the player. Who was that guy? Let me check the video description. Well, there's your problem right there. You see, it seems like every time someone tries to come up with some sort of nebulous critical failure of 5e, there's always some sort of straw man involved. Well, you know, I think some people just need to stop trying to tear down D&D and just play another game, if that's what they want. It is astounding how many people nitpick 5e. In my opinion, it's just people trying to get attention.
What we do here is go back.
After all, 5 feet away from an enemy in D&D is what I like to call the danger zone.